Let's discuss weight shift versus pressure shift. What's the difference? How is it affecting your game? And what are the biggest misconceptions? It's a very common issue that I see from players when they come into the studio here at 419 Golf. They want to get on the Smart to Move 3D dual force plates because they're just not sure how to shift weight, how to open their hips, right? And there are so many misconceptions behind what a weight shift is, how we shift weight, when we shift weight, where do we shift weight. And I think it's because there's been a lot of different ways throughout history of teaching golf that we can talk about shifting weight. And I think it's a really important part of understanding this, to understand the difference between what a weight shift is versus what a pressure shift is, right? And the beautiful thing behind these Smart to Move 3D dual force plates is that we can measure pressure, we can measure force, and we can actually see the center of mass of your body while all of that is happening, which really starts to help players finally, once and for all, understand what the difference is between pressure shift versus weight shift. So as we dive into this, I think it's really important to start to understand a couple of these key principles behind what weight shift is versus what pressure shift is. So as a human being, we're an object on the planet, right? And remembering from science class back in the day, I'm old, but every object has a center of mass, right? And so we as human beings have a center of mass. And as we address this golf ball, for for us as guys, it's a little bit of right about a belly button. For girls, it might be a little bit lower. But as we bend over, it's actually sort of out in front of us, right? The center of mass of our body is sort of right out here in front of us, going to represent that as my fist right here, okay? Now, obviously, as we stand on the earth, we've got pressure in each foot. Well, then there's going to be this combined center of pressure that's going to fall somewhere in between our feet, right? If I've got 60% of my weight on my left foot, or center 60% of my pressure on my left foot and only 40 here on my trail foot, then that combined center of pressure is going to be a little bit closer to my left foot, right? Not a lot, but a little. For a driver, a lot of times we got a little bit more. Let's say we're 50-50, maybe we're 55-60 on the trail foot versus 45 or 40 on the lead. That combined center of pressure is going to move a little bit towards the trail foot, okay? So we have our center of mass, and we have our center of pressure, okay? Two different things. And one of the things that I think a lot of people get wrong when it comes to weight shift, right, is they're thinking of mass. And what they're trying to do when they've been told you got to get your weight into your trail foot is they take their whole mass of their body and they literally shift it to the right. So now their mass gets over here on top of their trail foot, which then they've got to get all of that mass back in front in time before they hit the golf ball, which is really hard to do on a consistent basis. Number one, because you're not going to shift all of it over there the same amount every time. And then number two, you then have different amounts to shift it back forward. Okay? And what we see from good players is their mass stays relatively centered, right? But as they swing the club back, they shift pressure into this trail foot rather early, but the mass stays really centered. Okay? So there's a big difference between shifting pressure versus shifting mass. And oftentimes here in the studio, I like to give this analogy, right? When we learn to ride a bicycle as a little kid and we're sitting here, we've got our hands on the handlebars and we're sitting on the seat. When we're pedaling, our mass stays pretty centered right over top of the seat. We are shifting pressure as I lift my right leg, my left foot has more pressure. As I then push down with my right leg and my left leg lifts up, it flips, it goes into the right foot. We wouldn't ride a bicycle by shifting mass as we pedaled. This would be mass shifting. And yes, obviously, when we shift mass, there's also going to be some pressure movement, right? Of course. But what the best players are doing is they are actually keeping their mass pretty centered while they're shifting pressure. And when we can learn that, the advantage behind that and the secret behind this is it adds a lot of effortless power, because as we shift our pressure to the trail foot behind the mass, then the key is we want to leave our mass there and shift pressure in front of it. Now it creates this, what we call a moment arm, and now we get effortless power because of how we have controlled our mass, how we're shifting pressure, right? So I definitely encourage people to find a facility that has force plates, because this stuff can be measured and you can really start to understand exactly how you do it. If we don't have access to force plates, not a problem. There are some drills that we can do to start to understand what shifting pressure versus shifting mass actually feels like. Okay, so you can see I'm standing on a makeshift pressure board. I made this here in my studio myself, and it's basically just a piece of wood that's got a strip of wood right down the middle that kind of makes a teeter-totter, right? So when we learn about shifting pressure versus shifting mass, I like to use this after players get on the force plates to see what's happening, start to give them an understanding of, hey, what do we want this to look like? So I've got a 7-iron here, and typically what we're going to see with a 7-iron from a better player is that they're going to have a little bit more pressure in their setup on their lead foot. It might be 55% pressure left lead foot, 45 trail, up to 70% of pressure on that lead foot. I tend to be in that 55 to 60% range of pressure on my lead foot. So what would happen then, the teeter-totter board would be down as a right-hander on the left side in my setup. Once again, I think what a lot of people think when it comes to shifting weight or shifting pressure is they just move their whole mass to the right in their backswing or to the trail side. And obviously that's going to lower this pressure board, right? But now I've got to move my mass a long way back to the left, right, in 0.2 seconds of a downswing. Not an easy thing to do consistently over and over and over. So what you will see from good players is as they swing back, there's a pressure shift, but they don't move their mass all the way on top of this trail foot. It might move slightly to the right, okay, but it's not moving over top of the trail foot. So in other words, their pressure is getting behind their mass as they swing back. Right? My mass stayed pretty centered, but my pressure shifted right. Then in the downswing, what we want to do is we want to get this pressure board back down on the left while our mass stays behind that, and then we swing through. So it would be left down, then we're going to go right down, left down, swing. Right, left, right, left. We're going to do a little army crawl here, okay? So left foot's down. I'm going to get my pressure to the right really early in this backswing while my mass stays pretty centered. Then I'm going to get the board down really early in my downswing and finish. If we can start to learn what that feels like, now we're shifting pressure the proper way while controlling our mass, which is really going to help us strike this golf ball more solid. We're going to hit it farther, and we finally have a weight shift or a pressure shift that is proper versus all of these crazy ideas that people think, right, by moving their mass all over the place in their golf swing. It's not going to be an efficient way to play the game. All right, so now I've felt that on the pressure board. I'm just going to feel that on the plates. Pressure's right, pressure's left, mass stays centered, swing through. We're going to hit one. Another solid golf shot. And listen, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that a lot of people get this concept wrong. So if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor, hit that like and subscribe button. Definitely leave me comments in the comment section down below. Any questions, any other videos that you would want to see. You want to see something deeper when it comes to weight shift, pressure shift, leave those down below. I appreciate you watching. I'll see you next time.